Hi everyone, welcome to our summer Creative Access Masterclass. We're just waiting for everyone to join us. While you're doing so, if you would like to write in the chat who you are, where you're, what part of England you're in, what stage of life you are, if you're at uni, if you're in training, what you're up to at the moment, it'd be lovely to hear from you. We're going to catch up. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes while everyone comes in. But yeah, do let us know who you are, because we always love to see who we're talking to. Hope you've got a big glass of water there, Zoe and April, ready to start.
Yeah.
I know, it's so hot. Right, we'll give it one more moment. Hi, Rebecca, nice to see you. Hi, Amber. You have to tell us where you're from. If you're in London, normally we get people in different countries, which is exciting as well for us. So we like to see how far we're going. Oh, hi, Courtney. You're starting your MA. Excellent. Good luck with that. Oh, Reykjavik. There you go. We're getting exciting further afield. Excellent. Well, welcome to all of you. We'll give it another 30 seconds and then we'll start. Hi, Laura. Oh, hi, Kayla. Kayla's one of our new trainees at White Cube, which is exciting. Oh, I'm glad you've been looking forward to it. Hi, Mitoshka. Oh, I love Four Corners as well. They're a great organisation. So, really interesting to see all of you and where you are. So thank you. Oh, hello, Amina. There you go, Zoe, one of yours. Hi, Townsend. Danielle, all of you, lovely. Oh, hi, of course. Hi, Danielle. I haven't seen you for a while. Okay, well, I'm going to stop talking and saying hello to everyone, although I'd love to do that. So I just wanted to say welcome very briefly. My name's Josie, and I am the Chief Executive and one of the co-founders of Creative Access. I always love these events because they're a chance for us to kind of hear from some of our really inspirational people within our community. And today is a particularly special event for us for two reasons. Number one is that it's being hosted by one of our incredible former interns and now employee. And number two, that our guest speaker is one of our board members. So we're super excited about that. So it's a very special event for us. So April, as I mentioned, is we placed her back nearly 7 years ago at an organisation called LIFT, which is the theatre organisation, London International Festival of Theatre, I think. Is that correct? Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And then she moved on to Tate and then to Somerset House and is now a programmes coordinator doing amazing work with us here at Creative Access. So we're really thrilled to have her on board the team and also have her here running the session today. And Zoe is equally somebody that has been connected to Creative Access for some time, and we're now privileged that she joined our board as one of our trustees, which is just completely wonderful for us. Zoe has a really illustrious pedigree of work behind her, including one of our favourite shows, Soul of a Nation at Tate, which she co-curated. She's been at Hayward and all over the place. She'll give you her full background. And she's now director of the Chisenhale Gallery. So just a few housekeeping things before we start and listen to these two, which I can't wait for. I've been excited all week for this too. Just to say that if you have any questions, please answer them on the Q&A function, which is at the bottom of your screen, not on the chat, because we'll only be monitoring the Q&A function. And if you are able to, or you would like to, you'll be able to watch the recording after the session, but you can also follow us. We'll be live tweeting on @_Creative Access and posting an Instagram story throughout. So I think that's it from me, but I'm over to you, April and Zoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. And hello, everyone. Really happy to be doing this masterclass with Zoe today. Really excited to get stuck in. Before I do, I will start with an introduction. Kind of Josie's already started it, but just to give you a bit of an insight to what I was doing beforehand, before I was working at Creative Access. So my background is actually in youth arts and engagement. When I was studying, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I knew I was creative. I knew I was really interested in arts and culture, but I had no idea what I wanted to do after I finished school and university. But I was always part of participatory arts projects, namely youth theatre project, youth theatre programme that I was part of for 10 years in Stratford. This is pre-Olympics, when there was nothing really going on in Stratford, but there was a really pioneering theatre there called the Theatre Royal Stratford East. So after I finished my studies, I kind of went back there. I was part of the youth theatre for about 10 years until I was 18, went off to uni, came back and said, firstly, I was unemployed. So I was signing on. And then I went to youth theatre and offered to volunteer. And that was my first real job in the arts. But I also wanted to do it because I loved being part of the youth theatre project and I loved working with young people. So I knew that that was something I wanted to pursue, but I didn't really know where I was going to go next. And I guess my whole career has been very intuitive and kind of like naturally just found opportunities that kind of really appealed to my core values and what I really enjoyed doing. So I kind of started off in youth theatre, and then I went into youth arts and engagement, project management and production. And then I kind of got my internship with Creative Access, which I was overjoyed to discover because I didn't realize that Creative Access existed when I first graduated. So I was over the moon to be given the opportunity to work as an assistant producer for Lift. So I did that for a whole year. As Josie said, it's an international biennial festival that spans 20 venues across London and has an audience reach of about 40,000. And it really kind of enabled me to get the production skills that I needed to get my next job, that was at Tate, where I met Zoe, but it was also my first experience working in the museum and gallery sector. So if you had told me when I was doing my studies that I'd end up in the museum and gallery sector, I would not have believed you. I never thought that museums and galleries were for people like me. I didn't really go to museums and galleries growing up, apart from like school field trips. And even then we were told to behave a certain way and like basically not be ourselves in the spaces. So I kind of took it as an opportunity to kind of firstly learn a lot about the sector, but also create positive change and create environments that I thought that young people want to thrive and enjoy and be their authentic selves. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe now, because I feel like that's a really nice intersection, because that is how I first met you, Zoe, when you were kind of working on Soul of the Nation and you were interested to get the young people that I was working with in the Young People's Programs team at Tate. You were interested to get their insight, their ideas around kind of what they thought about the exhibition, and really encouraged them to be their authentic selves and express themselves at Tate as well. So yeah, Zoe, for those who aren't already familiar with your work, could you tell us a bit about your career trajectory and what you do at Chisenhale now?
Sure. Thank you very much, April, and thanks, Josie. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with all of you. So please do put questions in the Q&A, because I'm happy to answer them or to get answers if I don't know the answers. Yeah, I am currently director of Chisenhale Gallery, which is a nonprofit art space that was founded by artists almost 40 years ago. It's in Bow, and interestingly enough, just a very potted history of the gallery. The artists who founded the space were part of the wave of artists who were evicted from central London, from warehouse buildings like Butler's Wharf in particular, and then came across what at the time was a disused factory that had formerly produced veneer, had also been a brewery warehouse at one point, and they literally laid the groundwork, and I mean that in the veritable sense, did the wiring, the drywalling, and created a space that since that time has played host to some really foundational and era-defining exhibitions in the contemporary British art scene, including Lubena Hamid's first London solo in the late 1980s, also one of Donald Rodney's exhibitions in 1989, Wolfgang Tillman's first solo, people that I know a number of you on this call might be familiar with, like painter Lynette Yadam-Boakye had her first major solo there. So it's a very exciting place to work. We typically work with artists for a 1 to 2 year period. And what we do is we commission artworks and we produce them. So the work that's shown in the gallery starts off as an idea, and we work with artists very closely, providing constructive, critical friendship to turn that idea into reality. And so by the time the work goes on view, and the gallery next opens with an exhibition by Abbas Akavan on the 14th of August, there will have been a long process to get us to that point. And it's very exciting that each exhibition transforms our gallery space. And we're a small team, but very dedicated. And it's a very different scale for me to work on, because as Josie mentioned, I actually came from a background of being a museum curator, working in very large national museums. So my start was at the V&A, the Victoria and Albert Museum, where I was an assistant curator and then a curator from 2003 to 2013. I was made redundant when a new director came in and changed the course of the program. And then around that same time, Lubena approached me about applying for a funded PhD opportunity at the University of Central Lancashire. And almost in parallel, I started working part-time as a curator of contemporary British art at Tate, which I applied for. And again, I only applied for it because it was a part-time role. So I think, April, to your point about how we see ourselves, I think that plays a role as well. Whatever I thought a Tate curator was, I didn't think that was me. Even though I'd previously been a curator at the V&A for 10 years, it still didn't compute. It was this level up mentally for me that took some time to process. And while I was doing both of those things, the PhD and leading on mostly the artist film program at Tate Britain, so working with some great artists like Helen Kamek, who went on to win the Turner Prize with her first kind of screening, and a number of other people. I was also asked by the directors at Tate if I would start also working at Tate Modern as one of the curators of what's called international art, so the kind of program writ large, but we all have geographic or time specificity. So those of us who work with living artists are usually working in a regionally specific geography. And so I started working on the Africa acquisition strategy and doing a lot of the Africa research travel alongside my former colleague, Elvira Diangani Ose. And so that was, a really major period of learning for me. And it was during that time working at Tate Modern when what became Soul of a Nation started to develop. And then that ended up being, more than full-time job for a couple of years. And thereafter, I curated the British Pavilion at the Venice Biennale. And that might be enough for us to get talking.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like, it's really interesting that we've both had quite varied and broad experiences. And I think I really resonate with what you're saying about sometimes you don't necessarily see yourself in that position until you're in it. And then the role can be what you want it to be and how you interpret it to be. And when considering that, when we were preparing the questions, I brought in my colleague Amanda, who's the programs assistant at Creative Access, and we were thinking about kind of like the fact that many people who are new to the visual arts world aren't entirely sure what a curator is or what a curator does. So what would you say is the role of a curator, and what does being a curator mean to you or look like to you personally?
Okay. I think so. It means a lot of different things. And even when I started in the role, it wasn't a word that was as much in the kind of common consciousness as it is now. You know, the way people talk about being content curators or curating a playlist. And I think all of those things are valid. So I'm also not here to kind of denigrate other forms of curating. The root word of curating, curare, means to care. And so in a really traditional way, the way that I learned how to be a curator was all to do with collections care. So I was working at the Victoria and Albert Museum, looking after a collection of works on paper in particular, and then was cataloging the collection of Leslie Schreier's propaganda posters, which was fascinating because it includes things like a really major cache of printed ephemera from the Black Panther Party in New Haven, Connecticut, where the collector was then at school. And I think it was through like close looking at objects and asking questions about the objects, or trying to figure out how to then be a conduit to get people as excited about those objects as I was, or even things that I might not have been interested in, but then having to do the research as an assignment, the things you find out, then channeling that into knowledge that other people can access. So that might mean writing a museum label or a small paragraph that then lives on the website. Not all of curating is exhibition making or inviting an artist to show in the space. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, and one of them is about how I find and meet artists. One of the shortcuts that many of us rely on is you just have to see a lot of work. You know, I don't think you can curate by JPEG or PDF. I think it's important to talk to artists and see work and ask questions and be honest when you don't get something, because it's often that work that sticks with you because there's something about it that's not quite resolved or that you're not clear on, that is where a lot of interest lies. And I think the most important thing is that it takes time. You know, it's a slow process. It's not you've seen one thing like boom, you've got an exhibition. That it can be a process of talking for many, many years. And I often say that to artists, like, I don't work quickly. I do a lot of work. I think I work hard and I give it my all, but you don't necessarily have to generate many, many projects at once. And I do firmly believe that there are different kind of outlets that can be useful for the artworks and how you present them. You know, it could be through a talk, it could be a catalog essay, it could be a book, it could be a radio show, it could be a podcast. And I think it's worth asking the question, like, does this need to be an exhibition? Is this something that people can experience and get something out of without my having to stand there with them and say, this is why this is good, this is why this is here, and this is why this is here. You know, it needs to have some like spatial and experiential integrity of its own. And so that's certainly something that I learned over time, and that I think I learned the hard way through projects with excellent artists, but where that aspect of thinking about the intended audience maybe wasn't part of the equation. So what you were saying, April, about you know, the work we did together at Tate, that was really an incredibly concerted effort to think about who are we trying to talk to and why. I want this exhibition to reach certain people, and I know that that's going to take effort. We can't assume that that will happen on its own. So I think that a lot of what curating is thinking through not only the artwork and the artist's intention, but for me, it's about wanting to be a conduit so that that artwork and the artist's ideas connect to an audience in the right way.
Mm. It's really interesting you like speak about some of the challenges that you face. Could you tell us a little bit more about some of the like, key or major challenges that you've really grappled with over the course of your career, and like how you overcame them?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with finding your people and having a good supportive network around you. So yeah, some of it's just down to making mistakes, that every idea you have isn't necessarily a good one, but it's good to have people around you who you trust to say, like, this can be better and this can be stronger. And again, as I was saying about what I think Chisenhale does so excellently, from a place of constructive criticism. It's not because someone's trying to tear you down, it's because they want it to be the best it can be. And I think it's also very much around that question of not everything needs to be an exhibition. So I spent few months at the V&A at one point, just answering complaints from the public every single day, because a series of interventions that I had put together by an incredible roster of artists. So this is not an artist failing, but the way to communicate that, or how people were meant to access it, was very much a source of frustration. You know, the fact that people felt like they had to try and find the artworks, when certainly contemporary art at the V&A wasn't necessarily a given. It wasn't why most of the core audience was coming to the museum in the first place. So the work was not always challenging, but certainly not what was expected. And then on top of that, if what people do anticipate is an exhibition, whether so in a room, so whether that means you've paid for a ticket or not, that the experience has a beginning, middle, and end that's kind of predefined and effectively set dressed for you. And if something is more open-ended, so if the artworks are more experimental and then they're shown in an experimental context and you might happen upon them or you might not, then you're asking a lot of people without necessarily giving them everything they need. I mean, that's just one example, but I think that it's about thinking through those sorts of things, the things that you might think, well, this is great because it's so different from what came before. It's also worth thinking about, well, what's the context in which people will receive it? And yeah, I think that for me, that's an important part of what I do, is not just thinking about an idea or knowing that an artist's work is worthwhile, but really trying to think through how to frame and present that to best effect so that people can also get it. You know, I really care very deeply about contemporary art not feeling like the joke's on you or that you're excluded, that there's some kind of bad joke because you're not there. I'm just aware we've got like 12 questions in the Q&A. So
we will, okay, we'll shoot through and then we will have about 20 minutes for questions at the end.
Cool.
I'll go on to my next question so that we can get there. So you recently became a trustee of Creative Access, and obviously our mission is to help individuals from all groups that are underrepresented to thrive in the creative industries and support them to progress to senior positions. At what point did you realize your potential to be a leader? And did you always know you wanted to be director of organization, or like kind of was there a defining moment, and what helped you to make that transition?
Oh, this is easy thing to answer. No, I didn't see that in myself. And I'm not saying that with false modesty. I just didn't have an aspiration to be a director. And I think to your point about certain setbacks and other things, you know, I'm a Black woman in the arts, so certainly I've experienced institutional racism, you know, at that kind of intersection of both, you know, sexism and racism. So I think that I'd never necessarily aspired to be leading that structure, because I guess having worked within some large ones, I was very well aware of what my strengths are and what I might be able to do to hopefully foster some change from within. But often that had to do with audience facing work, and then also ensuring that the artists that I worked with felt supported. But I think that the more I thought about it, I was starting to be like very happy then being able to make exhibitions and getting to the point where the research that I'd done and the artists' work that I got to know meant that a lot of times artists that I very much wanted to work with would also want to work with me. That's a great place to be. So I wasn't looking for like the next thing. And 6 different people who I know or worked with in the past sent me the Chisenhale job advert. That included my first boss, who's in fashion. So again, in the creative industries, but not in visual arts per se. 2 friends who work on the kind of commercial side of the art world, and 3 different artists. And by the time the 6th one happened, I think I started asking myself, like, what are you afraid of? Like, if people see this in you, like, at least you've got to try. And so that's why I tried. But again, that was definitely down to, very supportive people, and very surprising, as I said, like my first boss, it's not like I was in touch with her every single day, but the fact that she saw this and then thought of me and sent me a text, that meant something. So I think that definitely made a difference in terms of what leadership could be. But equally, this was a while ago now, but in 2008, I was also part of the first cohort of an organization in New York City called the Center for Curatorial Leadership that was looking to train curators to eventually be museum directors. And it was phenomenal insight into governance, like what it means to work with trustees, finance, conflict negotiation, like all of these things. And yeah, the job just felt kind of insurmountably big. So at that point, and realized that's a long time ago now because it's 2021, but I left that training thinking, yeah, I don't know if I want to do that. And yeah, it's been a challenging time because of COVID, but I'm really, really enjoying this role a lot.
That's really, really interesting to hear that kind of, you often think of leaders as people that kind of are on a really strong, like really driven, clear path to leadership, but actually what you're saying is that you kind of really you weren't sure if that was something you wanted to do, and then also people were recommending you and pushing you to kind of be a leader, and then that kind of sparked.
That's the thing, there's different models of leadership, and you don't always have to lead by like, elbowing your way to the front, like, right, I'm in charge now. I think that, and that's the funny thing, like I probably do that like at home or with my friends, with my family, like this is what we're having to eat. But like in a work context, I definitely, I like to be a consensus builder. That's not always the easiest path, but I think that I hope does also give some different models to people that, for all of the future leaders who are on this call, that there are different ways to be leaders, that kind of, the big boss that is always right and won't let you say anything or would never admit to being wrong, that doesn't have to be the only way in which leadership is like exercised or demonstrated. And I guess, one of the bigger leaps for me is that for curating in particular, the things that can make you a good curator aren't necessarily, it's not the same skill set. It's a very different skill set to be an effective director. And hopefully the two can be complementary, but it's not necessarily like if you're good at reading a book and kind of holding information in your head, talking to artists and asking critical questions, that's not necessarily the same skills that you need to fundraise effectively or to speak about the program. Some of that can be helpful, but a lot of it is like being willing to keep learning new things. And that to me, I think is important too, that it's possible to grow and build and become a leader rather than like leadership being this fully formed thing that you either are or you aren't.
Talking of leadership and growth, as you said, you're currently based in a dynamic and creative residential neighbourhood in the heart of London's East End, where I'm from. But you've also worked for Tate, a national institution, and internationally, creating, the British Pavilion for the Venice Biennale. And in 2019, co-curated the award-winning international touring exhibition Soul of the Nation, Art in the Age of Black Power. I'm interested to know more about your approach to curation and what the core values are that remain throughout all of your projects, and how do you stay authentic to yourself and your kind of leadership style when working on behalf of an organization?
Yeah, those are big questions. I mean, one of those, we did an exercise as a team not very long ago, which I think was really instructive. That was designed to effectively like re-articulate and reaffirm like our mission and our vision and our values, so that when we get up and go to work every day, you know, whether we're able to be in the same building together, or especially those times when we're not and we're having to work at a remove, who are we and what are we doing and why are we doing it? And I think that sense of clearly articulating a shared purpose, and not that shared purpose needs to be fixed, it can also change and needs to keep being talked about, but the fact that we talked about it together, I think really helped distill some of the essence of, you know, Chisenhale's values, certainly, but I do think that they're mine as well, and they relate to curiosity, and I think that's both a kind of intellectual curiosity, but also like an emotional and interpersonal curiosity, you know, like caring and being interested in what other people are doing and what they have to say, particularly the artists that you're working with, but also your colleagues and the team and their input and what they can bring to something. I think there's a real sense of like, yeah, that clarity of purpose around really wanting to keep innovating, you know, to not want to repeat yourself just because you did something great before. You really still want to find ways to take risks and do something that hasn't been done before. So I think there's some of that. I think in a case like, well, whether it was working with Kathy Wilkes on the British Pavilion or the 10th anniversary Johannesburg Art Fair exhibition in Johannesburg, I think a lot of it also has to do with wanting to respect the context that you're working in, and having some conversations about, yeah, what that shared, like what excellence might look like what is it that you want from this project? How can that work? Because I think some of those questions early on are really helpful. And then, yeah, a little bit of like humanity and a sense of humor. So Soul of a Nation ran from 2017 until 2020 after a US tour. And all of the artists were so happy with how their work was presented. And I think that's because there was a very deep and sincere level of respect, down to, in the case of, say, how the photographs were presented. There was one area where an artist made a point of saying to me, like, wow, you put me next to my friend. I really like that. And I knew this person would like that. And I knew where the work wouldn't work, or where, you know, even if aesthetically it could have also looked okay, where it would have not worked in some other senses. So I think that there's, yeah, I think a lot of us who work with living artists, a lot of what we bring to the job is hopefully like a high level of emotional intelligence. But, you know, that takes its toll too, you know, that curators give a lot. And I can certainly say for the team at Chisenhale, like they give everything. So it's tiring work too, you know, it's good work and it's rewarding, but you know, it's not effortless. I think maybe that's what I wanted to say. You know, there's that sense of the way curating looks like a job in a film, and it's very incredibly glamorous, but also like it's not all that much involved. You know, someone's like, great, that looks fantastic, I'm going to go and have a martini now, you know. And so we do work hard, and they're long hours. And I think particularly where, you know, the actual making of artworks is concerned, you know, there's a huge amount of logistics behind the scenes too.
Talking of Soul of a Nation,
did I answer the question? I don't know. I think I maybe
definitely
on a tangent.
I think it definitely answers the question, and I think it really relates to what you were saying earlier about the role of curator, you know, being caring. You're caring about the artist. It's kind of based in community and care. And I think the fact that you were able to, before the kind of artist felt that you were acting in that way, that you recognized and you had the intention to make sure that he was connected to his friend, and there was a relation there that was cared for. The relationship was cared for and thought about and considered. And I think I'm just really interested in
a lot of good, oh, sorry. I think I've had so many, I've been lucky that I've had many good curatorial role models, starting from my first internship, because when I started in this field, there were basically you didn't get your start getting paid work. So I would have otherwise been locked out of this as a profession, because I wouldn't have been able to get my start working for free somewhere. But the J. Paul Getty Foundation started a series of summer internships that were paid for people of color that lived in Los Angeles. And I applied and was able to get, when I was 18 then, or no, maybe I was 19. If I was, that would have been like 1999. It might have been 98. I'm sorry, I can't remember. But I was based in the costume and textiles department at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And all of the curators in that department, and it was an all women department, were incredibly encouraging to me even then, and said they thought I should continue and think about getting a master's so that I'd be able to work as a curator. And yeah, I remember them saying to me, like, the hours are really long and the pay is really bad, but you can do this work. And I remember even when they said that to me, I'm like, you're not selling it to me. Why would I want to work hard and not be paid well? And here I am. And yet that is what they didn't lie, no lies told in the public sector working, but I did find the work really rewarding, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I guess they saw that kind of spark. And I think there is something about that. And I hope that everyone on this call and everyone who's part of the Creative Access cohort in particular sees that that's one of the things that Creative Access is designed to really ignite, that spark, that you can do this work and that you can contribute something. And, your great big project still might be a couple years off, and that's fine. Or you might meander and take a lot of different directions, just as you were saying, April, about your own career trajectory, but that, there's merit in thinking it through, and that you can do it, that there's I don't want anyone to talk themselves out of it because of, those same perceptions that we had, like, oh, I'm not sure this is what this kind of person looks like, or maybe I'm not who should do this role. I think that as much as I certainly want to advocate for individuals to have self-belief, I know that I've benefited hugely from people, also believing in me along the way.
We have a large audience tuned in today, and we are close to the 40-minute mark.
Yeah.
So I am going to go to questions shortly, but I have one more question for you. Most of people kind of, over the last year will have been in lockdown, or because of the pandemic won't have been to an exhibition for a long time. Some of whom may never have been to an exhibition. Looking forward into the future, how do you think the pandemic has impacted your vision for the future for Chisenhale, and how resilient do you think the sector has been, and how has it impacted your direction of travel as a curator and leader yourself?
That's a big compound question for us to answer in a minute before we go to these 23 other questions.
Couple minutes.
I'm trying to be optimistic. I think one of the things that I've seen about our sector at its best is that kind of caring and collaboration, and a lot of willingness to say, like, okay, well, I don't know how to lead, to guide an exhibition through a pandemic or work remotely. These are the things that are working for us. So there was a lot of kind of skill sharing. And I mean, some colleagues at Delphina Foundation, for instance, led a really major drive. It was like the best use of an Excel spreadsheet ever, so that all of a huge number of nonprofit arts organizations could club together to get a shipment of masks and hand gel in, so that we could all reopen as safely as possible. That's a really specific example, but one individual organization that had the contacts could make it happen was amazing. Also, you know, there was the perspex shortage. And so even to create a kind of safer working environment for front of house colleagues, we ended up being reached out to by Ivana, the director at Whitechapel Gallery, saying, you know, our techs are making some things. Would you, you know, we can provide shields, we can do these things. And that sense of like, I'm not just looking out for myself, but actually we can share resources and look after one another. I've seen in abundance, and I really hope that continues. And I think beyond that, yeah, a lot of what's been exciting and inspiring to me is about ways in which I absolutely want people to go back to museums and galleries, and for all of you on the call who can, to come and visit Chisenhale. But I think there's also a matter of knowing that, you know, art doesn't only exist within institutional walls, that it can exist in these other ways. So that's certainly something that we're experimenting with now, and has made a difference in how we've reached audiences in the last year. And again, that same sense of not taking for granted that everyone will be able to come to you. So our producer, Seth, and Amina, who's on this call, invited every single child from Chisenhale Primary School, immediately across the street from us, to the gallery. So our last exhibition by Yuji was seen by every student in the school and their teachers as well. And a number of them came back with their parents or carers. And that to me means something. It also means thinking about different ways of working. While the pandemic was really at its height in that first lockdown, it meant that there'd be a different way of even thinking about delivering something like a schools program. So this was at a time when it was unthinkable to have school field trips. And so we were able to team up with another charity called Art Is that works in primary schools, and to embed an artist in the Key Stage 2 curriculum, who worked with teachers and with all of the students across the whole school year. So that's something that's just finished, and they had a great time working with her. And that felt great too, because it wasn't, again, about exceptionalism. It wasn't tapping, you know, one little child on the shoulder and saying, you're very good at drawing, so you get special time with this artist. That everyone gets to experiment and nurture their talents in ways that might not come out in the classroom sitting at a desk. But if you get to roll around on the floor, something totally different happens. And you might be, you know, the most expressive or the most empathetic, or, you know, the one with the most ideas. And then that sense of purpose you then take back into the classroom, and that might then change the relationship at the desk. And that's certainly what we heard, was that it was a real leveler for the students, and something that everyone looked forward to in what's been a difficult year. So I think it's been a lot of that. It's a lot of thinking through, we can't sit in despair of what we can't do or the way things were, but even if we're having, you know, to grieve some of those losses, to also think about, okay, what are the opportunities for us to try something different? And then if we can get back to it, of course, we would want to then reinstate field trips and do something great and see what happens there. But the fact that you can try more in different things, and that I think there's a lot less institutional rigidity, in the sense of, we've always done things this way, so we have to do things this way. I think there's a lot more experimentation, even in some of the bigger places where that might not be as much of a core value as it is for us.
It sounds like the value of engagement and learning departments are going to be, you know, very crucial in the future of museums and galleries as well, to bringing people, and like you said, going to people and kind of that, improving that kind of engagement building. I have a question from Ams here, who has been trying to break into the museum and gallery sector for 3 years.
Okay.
And having listened to our backgrounds, a lot of it sounds like it just happened, like it flowed and then naturally turned into museum and gallery sector careers. Do you have any advice for someone just starting out?
Yes, I would say one of the things that I had been told by a mentor of mine, Thelma Golden, is like, recognize your own power. And at the time she'd given that advice to me, I was feeling very powerless. And so I didn't even know what to do with that information. But I think one of the things that's also been an aspect of the pandemic, I definitely wouldn't say that my career flowed. I think it's difficult in a truncated time to, like, you know, highlight every pothole and, you know, detour. You know, even when I applied to be an assistant curator at the V&A, and this was at the time when, you know, the creative jobs would be advertised in the Guardian, in the paper on a Saturday. So like, you'd go and get the paper, and then it felt like relatively early days of online applications. So then you'd have to like print out the application and fill it out in pen and ink and then post it. And I thought I'd done a really great application. I was very excited to get an interview, and I didn't. You know, I think that there's not a job that we've spoken about that I got the first time around until this Chisenhale role. You know, I had applied for other jobs at national museums, or, you know, even internal promotions. I think that it's a difficult time right now, but I guess what I was wanting to get at with the recognize your own power is, if there are ways that you can think about what it is about museums and galleries that you're interested in, you know, if it's publishing, you know, are there any kind of self-publications or zines, or, you know, are you submitting articles to other places? You know, people start their own websites. I mean, to this point about like what curating means, a family friend of mine who's was an intern at the Studio Museum in Harlem when I was there, Kimberly Drew, is a curator, but when she was an undergrad, she started a Black art Tumblr because she wanted to find out more about art, and, you know, is now followed by an astonishing number of people on Instagram as Museum Mammy, and has done so much to open up art historical discourse, not only through social media, but also in writing and, you know, in other formats, you know, in conversations and discourse with all number of people, including Venus Williams and others. So I think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, don't wait for an institution to give you permission to do some of the work that you may want to do, because there may well be other ways to do it. I don't know, I can't really think of a time I've been more inspired in an exhibition space than going to see the Babes alternative graduate degree show. And they recognized that so many artists of color, and queer artists of color particularly, did not have this kind of halcyon days experience at art college, and this kind of graduate show that's supposed to be this celebratory culminating moment is almost like, you know, you just like hands on your knees, panting, heaving, that you've kind of survived and made it through this marathon. And this alternative degree show became this kind of collective safe space, and, you know, really beautiful show. And a number of those works are now in various collections and museums as well, but they did it themselves, and then, you know, brought their friends along. So I think that that is another thing that I would say. I think that if 2020 taught us anything, it's certainly that institutions of any scale don't have all the answers, and a lot of times are looking at kind of nimbler, more grassroots ways of doing things because they're effective and they're reaching people and doing the work and doing it well. So I would say definitely don't be disheartened and keep trying. But equally, museums and galleries are constantly looking for good projects and ways to be involved. So I think that it's also worth, if you have something fully formed, can put that forward. And you might not get a yes the first time around, but again, I'm reminded of like really events that have existed for a long time now, like Friday Lates at the V&A, and the kind of takeovers that they have. And the fact that the V&A were so excited that Galdam would accept to curate a night. I think that there are ways to then propose the work. If you've got an idea in mind, like this is the kind of thing I'd like to do that I'm not seeing happening. If there's someone in an organization that you really like what they're doing, if I'm giving a for instance, but if you really respect the program at South London Gallery or at some of these other places, maybe it is worth writing a letter and saying, is it possible to have a conversation? Not everybody will reply or reach out back. I'm not saying that that's always going to be the case, but I would say try not to be disheartened. But I think there are more ways in, or to do what you want to do than waiting for someone to, pull your application out of a long list.
Absolutely. I think
that's helpful.
Yeah, really helpful. I completely agree with you. I think that it took me
I've applied for so many jobs before I got that first V&A job, and then so many.
Yeah, it took me 6 years to work in the museum and gallery sector, and numerous unpaid internships, and then after doing lots of unpaid internships and volunteering, I then was able to get the Creative Access internship. But it felt like before I even got the Creative Access traineeship, which was paid, which was amazing, I was doing so much kind of work before that was unpaid. And so I completely agree. It's all about what you're doing outside of the institutional work. So it's all about the stuff that I did, just DIY stuff, writing, because I enjoyed writing, and I'd offered to write for publications so that I could get that experience. Think about how you can get the requirements of a role like curating or producing without being a curator or producer, because I think I and I'm sure you agree, so I was doing a lot of that work before I even got the role, and like you said, applied for so many jobs before I was able to get the opportunity. Next question, conscious of time, hope that it helps. Jasmine said, would you say you have to have a master's to progress in museums and galleries? What do you think?
So what I would say is that, and April and I talked about this the other day, I do think that our sector has hyper professionalized. When I was made redundant, one of the reasons why Lubena encouraged me to think about the PhD is not because you need a PhD to do this work, or not that you need an MA to do this work, but because the roles are very sought after. The credential, it's kind of like, I don't know, like when Jessica Ennis or, somebody's like leaping over that, like that pole, like pole vaulting or something, and then the bar keeps getting raised. I know that when I started at the V&A, so I was in my early 20s, and most of the curators I was working with at the time were in their late 50s or early 60s, and very few of them had an MA. None of them had PhDs that I was working with directly. And some of them didn't have BAs, but were able to learn the job on the job. And again, they noticed that in their, certainly, the intervening generation, that an MA became the norm. And then certainly I've seen increasingly for curatorial roles in national museums, and in the United States, I would say maybe even more so, the PhD becoming almost a prerequisite. And again, I don't feel that that is because you need that academic training to be able to do the work and do the work well, but it becomes a way of separating things out. And so I'm very interested in thinking about how we do something about those barriers to entry, and have thought about that in terms of, you know, our own hiring practices. But, you know, at Chisenhale, we're a team of 10. So, you know, there's not like a vast squad of roles to be hired for. But I do think that it can be more challenging than it should be, because of how sought after the roles are. I'm sorry, I don't have like a better answer or a workaround for that, but it is something that I've noticed.
I'm just conscious of time, so I'm going to move on to the next question because there's lots of them. Maria is asking, how do you define a successful exhibition from your perspective, from the visitor perspective and or institutional context?
Oh, I definitely think that first and foremost, like, you want the artist to be happy. Like, that makes such a difference. It's like a great feeling. And like, I still feel it. I think it's one of the reasons why, like, maybe nothing I do will ever be as good as Solo Nation, but that's going to be okay. Because like I often say, and I've said in other interviews, like, we made 67 promises and we kept them. Like, every artist in the show felt like we did right by them and did what we say we were going to do. And so that, yes, I would have been, maybe that would have been tempered differently if it hadn't also connected with the public. But I think between those two things, that was a very, very good feeling. I think there's something very special about first-time visitors, you know, people coming to something that hadn't before and seeing something in it, or feeling that they can ask questions, or they can say like, this is really weird, or what does this mean? You know, whatever that is, that I think creating space for that, I get that same kind of curiosity and inquisitiveness, not thinking that everyone will have the same response to the work that you personally did, but that, yeah, that there's a level of comfort in terms of the discourse, or being able to form one's own opinion. But yeah, I would definitely say artist happiness first ranks very, very highly for me, but that's just me. But yeah, definitely, you know, it's that if a tree falls in a forest thing, you know, you want, the reason why an exhibition exists is because you want it to connect with an audience. A project that I did at the Barnes Foundation with my friend Nancy Ireson, about a woodcarver named Elijah Pierce, I didn't get to see. So I think we did a good job, but, you know, I don't have, Mr. Pierce is no longer living. I did not have the privilege to meet him during his lifetime, and not knowing how the exhibition was received, and it having been on during a period of, you know, much more severe restrictions, means far fewer people saw it. So I have the publication as this kind of record of this thing, but it almost doesn't entirely feel like it happened. So yeah, you definitely want to be making an exhibition for someone, and it's great to get positive feedback for that.
Well, talking about exhibitions, I'm hoping that everyone who's in the audience today can come along to Chisenhale and see one of the exhibitions soon. And thank you so much for joining us, Zoe. It is 6 o'clock. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I just want to very quickly inform everyone that the next masterclass, we're having a break for the summer, but the next masterclass will be on Thursday, the 30th of September. It will be around television production with ITV, a panel from ITV, and we'll send you some more details about that soon. Please keep in touch with us by following us on Twitter, our website, where we will share all the information about the upcoming masterclasses. And I think in the chat there will be a link to Chisenhale Gallery website as well.
Can we keep it open for a minute? Because I can try and answer some of the questions by typing the answers.
I I think we have to
We can
shut
keep it
off.
open for a couple of minutes. Yeah, we can do
I'll do it as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Well, the other thing is that we can always do this afterwards with, we can put on our website. But thank you. Sorry, April, for interrupting you. Did you want to carry on?
No, I was just going to say thank you so much to Zoe and for everyone to coming along today. It's been really nice.
It's been absolutely brilliant. I mean, my goodness, I don't think we've ever had this many questions. It just shows you what how interested people are, really, honestly, and they're keeping going. So thank you for your kindness, Zoe, and I hope you're a fast touch typer.
I'm trying to.
April, you did a brilliant job, and yeah, thank you all for joining us. I'm very, very grateful to you. We've got lots of things going on at Creative Access at the moment. If you head to our website at the moment, we've got some really incredible opportunities, like mentoring opportunities, work experience opportunities, internships, jobs, summer experiences, all sorts of different things. So there's a lot going on there. Please bear with us. Our website is a little bit temperamental at the moment because it's trying to get used to the rise in traffic that's going on, but we are addressing it. So if any of you have had any problems on it, please bear with us. We do really appreciate your applications and everything. The only other thing to say is that we are hoping to organise some in-person visits to galleries at some point soon, and so we'll watch this space, and hopefully we'll be able to do that. Thank you, Zoe. You're being very very speedy. I'm afraid.
I feel bad.
No, don't worry. What we'll do is we can take a note of the questions, and then we can. What we're going to do tomorrow is publish this on our YouTube page, and we're going to include a write-up on it. And what this proves to us 100% is that, Zoe, we're going to have to get you back again for another one of these because there's clearly a lot more interest and appetite for doing so. Are you good for us to close the webinar, Zoe? Would you want to?
Sure.
I very much appreciate your willingness to keep going.
Okay.
Great. Thank you all again. And thank you, Zoe, and thank you, April, really. And thank you all for coming. It's been really great. And thank you for your contributions and your engagement. It's really fantastic. So enjoy the sunshine, everyone, and see you all soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.